This is jazzology. It's a real science, honestly. Not just a podcast of me talking about me. Or maybe it is. It's jazzology.
All right. You know what? I think it was fine before, but you know what? It just technology, you know. Mr. Jerome Arab, welcome, sir. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing, bro?
Mate, I'm good. Well, I mean, obviously, apart from the obvious, with all musicians, but I'm sure we're going to cover that tonight. But I'm actually doing really well. Like, I've actually quite enjoyed the mellow nature of lockdown number 2. Yeah. And I feel like I've been relatively productive. I've got some music coming up. I've got some new projects. So I'm feeling good. Yeah.
Nice.
So I thought the way we'd start is, the way I usually start with these is that I'll have a little chat about how we know each other and a little bit about our paths to music. And then what I love to do, because I often with these, I mean, when I first started doing them, I knew the people quite well who I did the first few with. But then as I've moved on, it's been really nice to sort of like get to know the stories of the musicians that I sort of know, and obviously we've met before. And anyway, so you and I met at BBC Music Introducing Live. Was it 2 years ago? Or was it 1 year ago? It was 2 years ago? Or was it last year?
It was last year.
I think it was last year. Yeah,
it was last year. Yeah,
it was last year.
Yes.
And the story goes that we, BBC Music Introducing Live, I think it was the second day, if memory serves, they have an open mic stage in the main hall. In fact, there's a few dotted around. And I thought to myself, you know what? I'm going to go and do the open mic. I'm going to get there nice and early. I'm going to get a spot. It's going to be all good. And what happened? Every other musician at BBC Music Live had the same plan. So I turned up, and I was in the queue with you. And remind me of his name. Is it Robert? Anyway, there was another chap, and we were the last 3 musicians. And the guy goes, "Oh, sorry guys, I've only got 1 slot left." And we were like, "Oh shit! Like, what are we going to do?" So in the end, we decided to share the stage and have a little jam. And like, it was literally the first session of the day. Nobody was watching, but we made a connection, and the network works, right? So
yeah, I mean, we had fun. It was quite easy. It was just like, okay, well, we're here, and there's 1 slot. You know, let's do it.
You know, and I think that's, for me, that's what Introducing Live is all about. And I think that the danger is that I sort of went into that situation thinking that, oh no, it's okay, I'll get a prime slot, and then I'll have lots of people, influential people watching me, and it'll be all good, and it'll be good for my career. But actually, in retrospect, I was missing the point, which is the point was exactly what we did, which is that we just went, you know, there's 1 slot, we'll share it, we'll play some good music, we'll make some friends, and it's been beneficial. So, yeah.
Really true. It was quite interesting because, like, when you talk about missing the point, I feel like a lot of people go to BBC Introducing with really high expectations of this is a career changer. But the truth is, when you've been in the industry for a very long time, you realize that it's just another networking event. It's just another opportunity to meet a few people that may or may not change what you're doing. Like, they may amplify it, they may not. You don't know. You're just giving yourself an extra step, hopefully.
You can certainly see that. I mean, I don't want to talk about Intro Live too much because a lot of people have no idea what we're talking about. But I do feel like with those sort of conferences, you do see certain people who are they're sort of like, oh, I must talk to this person who's on stage, you know, otherwise my career is not going to go anywhere. And so there's almost like this desperation to chat to the bigwigs, and they just have no interest because they know the score, they know the system, and it's really, for me, Intro Live has been about the people who I've had coffees with, you know. And I remember his name now, Connor Patterson.
Yes, Connor. Well done.
Anyway, so Jerome, I thought what we could do is, I'm fascinated by your history and your journey in music, because a lot of the people that I've interviewed so far for these sessions, these little guest lives, have been, you know, European, born and bred, European, musically educated, and I, believe it or not, I'm actually a massive fan. I actually lived in Angola for 2 years. I think we may have discussed this a little bit when I saw you at BBC Introducing Live. But I'm a massive fan of Southern Africa and Southern African rhythms and beats, and I don't really incorporate it into my music, but I think it's such a privilege for me to talk to someone who was born and raised, I believe, in Zimbabwe.
Yeah.
And basically has a completely different viewpoint on the industry and on music in general. And I'd love to hear your history. Like, how did you get into it? How did your path evolve through music?
It's funny, I was thinking about this the other day. I was like, oh, wait, how did I get into music? And then I remember my dad used to play a bunch of like songs just in his room on his guitar. I must have been about five or six, about 5 years old. And I'd go into his room and just watch him. And he'd play like Bob Marley and all of these songs. And I just listen. And like the following, I remember it was about a week or week and a half. And then I was kind of singing along. And my dad was like, okay, well, he done Motown, the show, but the theater show in Zimbabwe. Yeah. And
okay.
He needed to
So
rehearse.
he's a soul man too.
His dad used to always, like, my dad has an amazing voice, but his dad would make fun of him, and everyone was like, oh, that's not a career. So he never ever considered it to be a career, you know. So he's always done it just in his room. Motown was his first like public show, amateur theater public show, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And he asked me, he was like, oh, well, I need to learn the backing vocals for Michael Jackson. So do you mind learning I Want You Back, I'll Be There, and I think it was Rockin' Robin, you know, and ABC. There were 4 songs. And I literally was like, yeah. And that kind of started me off because I learned those lyrics. And my sisters used to also like listen to other people's songs, and I'd then learn those songs and make up my own songs because I couldn't really read and write at the age of like 5, 6. But then by the time I got to about 10, because of listening to so much music. And also I don't know if you remember the times when we used to write write the lyrics.
Yeah, for sure.
Like record,
Oh yeah, pre-internet, you had to do everything differently. Just find the lyric sheet, you know, you had to like sit there and listen to it and note it. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, so that actually started my writing because I would basically do it for my sisters for money. They're like, oh, I like that song. I'm like, okay, cool. I'll write out the lyrics. You can pay me. And I'll just sit there and it's like, play. Okay. And I, you know, you don't realize when you're doing it, but all it's doing is it's actually enlightening like you to a potential career path without you even realizing at that time.
Yeah.
Because that led to poetry, and then I also understood melody a little bit better because of listening to so much music and actually storing that music in my head without even realizing. You know?
For sure, yeah. It's interesting you say that, because I think at a formative age, it's amazing how much of a difference that makes to your sort of your path as a musician and what you gravitate towards. Like I started doing full-time music about 3 years ago, and I went very much into the melancholic singer-songwriter domain, because that was my sort of like, you know, that was my comfort zone, as it were. And then to pay the bills, I've been doing a lot of function gigs. So I've been going back and saying, okay, well, what songs do I like to sing that sort of have been written by other people? And I found it's a lot of soul, it's a lot of Motown, a lot of disco. So I'm like learning all of these songs exactly like you did when you were 5. And it's bringing back, and I think the reason why I'm drawn to it is because my mum was massively into Motown, and that's what she played when she was younger. So it all kind of comes full circle, you know. It's amazing.
Yeah, it does. You're so right. Like Stevie Wonder, people can hear Stevie Wonder.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, Stevie.
In a lot of my music. Yeah, and it's like, oh, okay. Oh, you sounded a bit like Stevie Wonder there, and it's like, yeah, I know.
not a bad comparison.
So yeah, I mean, that was kind of how I started, if you ask me, getting into music. I was privileged in the sense that my uncles were also at the top of the pops in Rhodesia. So now this is early Zimbabwe. We're going into the 90s there. And they were called the Rusiki brothers. So we would open for them singing the same songs that I learned when I was about now 7, 8. So I'd go and sing Michael Jackson and stuff on stage to open for my uncles. Yeah, with my cousins. So it was kind of like, my dad he was never like, oh, this is going to be the boy's career path. It was like, oh, you've got something to do this weekend.
Yeah.
Cool. You know?
Yeah, yeah.
But I was just fascinated by the reactions that I would get, you know, and that was singing other people's songs. And then people would ask us to do weddings, you know, they'd ask my dad and I, oh, do you guys want to sing at the wedding? Oh, you know, and my dad would get backtracks and we would rehearse.
Yeah.
And my dad, he had so much knowledge for somebody that didn't actually live in that industry. You know, he would just be like, no, you need to learn the songs. You should make each song your own, sing it your way, not the way that it was recorded by the other artists. You know, find the soul of the song and try your best to communicate with it and communicate that to the audience. And it was amazing looking back. Like he was probably the reason why I chose this career path, even though he probably didn't want me at the time to go this way. He would have loved for me at the time to be a doctor or a lawyer or whatever it is. But yeah, he kind of shaped where I was going with it. He was like, yeah, you're going to do this, without him realizing it. Yeah.
How amazing. And so as you sort of grew and got older and moved more into music, and what was that transition between, I guess, doing it as an amateur and then deciding that you wanted to move forward and sort of at least explore what it meant to be a full-time musician and sort of have it as a career path? Where was that transition for you?
I probably made the choice to be a full-time creative at the age of, I'd say, 13. When I got into Allied Arts, which is basically like a theater competition that's run. It's Eisteddfods. I don't know if you have them here, where it's like theater competitions, basically.
I mean, I'm sure we do. I'm sure.
Yeah. So I'd won.
I'm a late bloomer, so I have no idea what that sort of stuff.
Yeah, so I was into a whole lot of poetry, acting, so short like news readings, all of that stuff, and I'd basically compete, like public speaking. And I'd done reasonably well, you know. I got offered a scholarship for it. By the age of 16, I had national colors for my contribution to the arts in Zimbabwe. Because I had done over 50-something productions in the space of 3 years. Yeah. So I had dedicated my life to being a creative from the age of 13. Songwriting, I had been songwriting on and off from that age as well. But I'd say 2008, I recorded my first song ever. And that was in Manchester, just college. I recorded my first song ever in 2008. By 2012, I had started performing, like opening for other artists and, you know, learning a little bit more about the gigging side of things, like putting myself out there, trying to do open mics. And because I'm not a guitarist and I'm not an instrumentalist and I can't really accompany myself, I'd go and jam with other artists, or I would, you know, find like DJs and get them to mix instrumentals and I'd just jump on the mic. That was how I started to build my career, you know. Club gigs, acoustic gigs. They used to call me One Strum J. Not much has changed.
Just one chord, strumming the same chord, is that the
So pretty much that's like now going 2008 to 2012, learning the ropes. 2013, I recorded some stuff in 2012, and in 2013 it got released internationally. For the first time in my life, I was in the top 10 Beatport charts and recognized as an international EDM artist because I was rapping over EDM songs. Okay. And I was like, ooh, maybe I can actually do this thing. You know, like maybe there's something there and I can do this thing. Still didn't know much about the industry. It's kind of like I'm just enjoying what I'm doing and I'm learning. Yeah. Went back to Africa due to a few problems here in England. Paperwork issues. So I ended up going back to Africa to try and gain some sort of confidence back and also make a way to move forward, to progress, because with no paperwork, it's very hard in any industry, in any country to progress. So that just so happened. And when I got back to Africa, I didn't know what to do with myself. My cousin was recording, so I tried to record with him. Couldn't get anything that I felt was solid. Spoke to one of my uncles. He kind of recorded me. Didn't feel like I had found my element. Tried to incorporate local languages to try and reach more people. Didn't really work. Ended up on Big Brother Africa. First time round.
You were actually in Big Brother Africa.
The first time round, I went in as an actor to confuse the housemates, to act as if they had been another house. Yeah.
Wow,
and,
how funny.
And that kind of gave me a little bit of exposure within my own country.
Yeah.
But still nothing came of it. I was sat in studios trying to record with some of the biggest producers, and they still wouldn't record me. They're just like, well, we're working on this. And I'd go there at like 6 a.m. and leave there at like 12 at night, just so I could record.
Yeah.
And nothing came of it. I ended up going back and forth between Zimbabwe and Zambia and meeting a few people. Nothing really happened. Went into the house as a housemate. And then my world changed completely overnight. Like when I came out of the house, the Big Brother house in 2014, it was like, wow. Everyone was like, yo, let's work. Let's do this. Let's do this. And I was like, okay, cool.
The notoriety kicked it on.
Yeah. So that's where I can say, honestly speaking, I felt like my career started is 2015, where I finally was recording a lot more. I had found producers that actually were trying to shape my sound and shape what I was like. They're trying to get in my head. They weren't just making stuff and I was jumping on it, which is what I was doing initially. Even in Manchester, it was like, oh, my boy would make a track and I'll jump on it as myself, but it wasn't me. It wasn't my sound. It was his sound.
Yeah.
So 2015 was where I started to discover my thing, like my Afrofusion sound that I was kind of going with. Been back and forth since 2017. And in 2017, I recorded and produced my first EP. This is after now nearly 10 years of recording. And that was the first time I actually put together a piece of work where I was like, yeah, let me see how I can actually break into this industry as Jerome. So talking about that, if you don't mind, I'm gonna...
Oh, mate, you've read my mind. I was going to say, feel free to elaborate musically.
Yeah, so as I said, I was never ever the greatest of musicians. So what would happen is I would listen to songs that I liked, and then I would find the chord progression, and then I'd be like, okay, cool, that makes sense. Yeah. And that was the chord progression for Thinking About You by Frank Ocean, because I really liked the song. So I'm just going to give you a sample of Frank, basically. So do you not think so far ahead? 'Cause I've been thinking about forever. That's Frank Ocean.
Sure, yeah.
So Jerome took that and it turned into... I'm staring at your face, but I get lost in your eyes. Ain't picking up the pace. I'm gonna take it slow, slow, so slow. You're looking at your phone, but I don't want you to go home. Ain't got your jacket, but I'm keeping you warm tonight. No need to complicate these issues. I'ma kiss you and make love until the morning like strawberry moon. Oh, you got me singing like strawberry moon. Oh,
got me.
So pretty much that was a song I wrote after I got with my current partner, who now carries my second child's on the way.
Okay. Is that about
yeah.
her?
And yeah, Strawberry Moon is talking about love.
Yeah.
Her father had said something to us in Zambia. I picked him up from the bus stop, and he was like, the moon's pink. And that's due to all the chemicals and the gases in the atmosphere, you know, and it's a one-off event. It happens maybe once or twice in a lifetime, in someone's lifetime. And I was like, wow, it sounds like he's explaining love, you know. And Strawberry Moon, that's how it came. Is I looked at
like
the moon.
that, the rarity of the natural phenomenon. Well, so there's a few people who like that. I mean, we've got Gando, and we've got Mariah DeVries. Mariah was the first person that I interviewed on this, so she's an amazing singer-songwriter. So you got a clap from her. But I find it really interesting because I've not really talked to many. I mean, I've interviewed a few people now for these sessions, and we didn't really discuss the inspiration element of songwriting, because I think in a way, and it's really, you know, what I really like about what you said is that in a way it's a bit of a sort of like taboo subject, because you don't want to admit as a singer-songwriter that you basically stole stuff from somebody else, right? Everyone wants to think that they have this kind of like complete original creative thing. And the reality is, it doesn't matter who you are. There's 25-30 million songs that have been produced. There's only so many chord progressions. You're going to rip it off someone else. And it's funny because I was going to play a song tonight and talk about it as well, which has a really interesting history from that perspective, because I wrote a song called Predictable, and it's kind of one of my poppier songs. And once I'd written it and I produced it on the album, I was then sat there and I was listening to it, and it just suddenly dawned on me that I'd stolen the chord progression from Ed Sheeran. And like that, for me, it was like a bolt to the heart. I was like, no, but I was like too far into. We'd already been to the studio, and anyway, so it's just a nightmare. But so it's interesting. I had to get over my pride because of it, because I came up with this song and I thought, okay, it's a really cool song. I really like it. And then my pride almost made me throw it away, because I was like, oh, I can't do something that I've ripped off so clearly from somebody else. But you know what I love about what you said is that actually you're just upfront about it. You're like, you know what, I love the Frank Ocean song and I wanted to put my own spin on it. And I think that's cool, man. That's really cool, because pride gets in the way. But
yeah, I mean, you hear it so often. Like a lot of artists, that's their biggest downfall. Oh, Gando says he's going to follow you.
Joshua. Oh, it's Joshua Gando.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Joshua. Sorry, I presumed Gando was your first name. Although Gando Joshua sounds like a really cool artist name, actually, doesn't it? like Elton John, like switch them round.
True.
Anyway, sorry, carry on.
Yeah. So, I mean, the truth is we all take inspiration from something, you know. To think as creatives that we kind of sit on an island and somehow these ideas just come to fulfillment, you know, it does. For me, it's like you are lying to yourself majority of the time, because you live in a world where there's so much influence. Like you're online, you're listening to all the greats whenever you feel like. You've got access to so much more. You know, you go out, like before the pandemic, I would go out to coffee places and just listen to people's conversations while I have a coffee, because I know that I'm writing about life. Yeah. So, you know, we're constantly stealing.
Yeah.
That's what we do. Like that is what we do. We constantly steal people's stories, you know, and taking inspiration from something that is good is there's nothing wrong with that. If you like something, it's just how do you make it your own? And I guess I got that from my dad from when I was a kid, is you'll sing the song as if it's your own. So when you take something, it's not about stealing it and plagiarizing it. It's about actually taking what you like from it, the essence that you like from it, and holding on to that and then working with that.
I do believe that the the way that creative industries are seen these days has evolved into something that's a lot more authentic in that way. And it's interesting because you could argue that there's a lot of repetition, there's a lot of building on what people have done before in the creative industries these days. Like you look at TikTok, for example. TikTok is all about imitation, and there's a huge amount of creativity there. And instead of having this system where we sort of like pretend as creatives that we have some sort of like, you know, amazing inspiration that comes from nowhere. Like it's like maybe if you go back 50 years ago when sort of nobody really knew where they were getting their inspiration from, and they kind of like hide it to themselves and go, oh, it's just my creative genius. I think these days you can't get away with that so much. So it's a lot more upfront, it's a lot more authentic and honest of people just saying, yeah, like we're just part of a bigger thing. We're part of this flowering tree, which is sort of like sprouting creative branches everywhere. And you might be part of this branch here and part of that branch there. And you're just a stepping stone in like creating this bigger picture. And it's quite exciting actually to be part of that and to be honest about that instead of sort of trying to pretend like we're, you know. So anyway, so what I thought I'd do is, shall I show you this this Ed Sheeran ripoff song? And
Please.
but again, I shouldn't be calling it a ripoff because like this is a really cathartic conversation for me to like accept the fact that I've, you know, been inspired by the great man Ed Sheeran. But
so it's a good place to take inspiration from.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, if I could somehow move that inspiration into a little, you know, at least a part of his income, that'd be great. So the Ed Sheeran song that I ripped off by accident is "Don't," and it goes like. Like that, so that's the chord structure, and I think it goes. Met this girl late last year. She said, "Don't you worry if I disappear. I'm not really looking for another mistake. I called an old friend thinking that the trouble would wait, and then I jumped right in." Anyway, so it's sort of like it's this chord structure, and then it's this almost like talky melody, and so I didn't realise what was going on in my mind, but basically I wrote a song that goes like this. Let me reminisce a story about a girl I used to know, where she would look into your soul while you were talking, leave you with a stone cold afterglow. I gave her 4 or 5 words and I was falling. I could have sworn she felt it too. So imagine my surprise at going all in, sitting on a 7 and a fucking 2. She said, "I love you, but I don't love you like that." How predictable, oh. She got a hold on another heart. She said, "I don't know why this always seems to happen. Baby, you were doomed from the very start." No. Oh, she got a hold on another heart. Well, I don't know why this always seems to happen. Baby, you were doomed from the very start. She said, "I love you, but I don't love you like that." How predictable, oh. Anyway, so basically, it's just a complete rip-off of this. But
it's not,
I love it.
It's not. You added a nice swing to it. You added a really nice swing to it.
I'm glad. You know what? I'm glad that you noticed that. But I think that's, you know, going back to this thing, I clearly still have an issue around it. I still sort of apologize for the ripping off of it. Yeah. You know, the chord structure's similar. You're right, the swing's slightly different, the tempo's slightly different, but and there's a few little bits of difference. But I don't know that anyone that's listened to that song and gone, it's just Ed Sheeran, you know. So it's interesting because I feel like I need to stop apologizing for the inspiration from Ed and just embrace it. Just say, you know what, he's a great singer-songwriter. I really like that song, Don't, even though my heart is in maybe slightly more mature, melancholic singer-songwriter stuff. But you know, I just got to accept it. You know, he inspired me, and I'm going to say yes. I was inspired by Ed Sheeran.
Man, the boy's amazing. The boy is like the #1 songwriter in the world right now. without a shadow of a
He
doubt.
writes he writes for everybody.
And it's not just the fact that he's writing for everybody. It's the scale of which he's writing for them. You know, it's like you're producing hit after hit after hit. And I'm not saying that once you're in the circle, you're in the circle. But still, to be that versatile, to be able to kick out that many songs a year is not easy. You know, it doesn't matter how creative you are. And I mean, I can see where he takes his inspirations from as well, you know. And I think, oh, wow, okay, cool. Like, he's listened to a bit of Bob Dylan, and I can hear it in a lot of his stuff. You know, he's listened to a few of the Motown acts as well, which is cool. Like, for me, that's cool, because that's what we're doing, is we're taking what's inspired us to do what we're doing, and we're just putting it into practice, which not many people can do. You know? So
the question begs, what do you think about the culture of suing artists for songs that are similar? Because Ed Sheeran got sued by the Marvin Gaye family for stealing some chord progression. And I mean, basically, it's the, you know, there's a few artists. I think Taylor Swift's been sued. I think
Sam Smith's been sued.
Yeah. So what do you feel about that? Do you feel like if let's say Jerome Arab next year releases a song that has a similar chord structure to a Motown classic and does really well, and you earn yourself 10 million quid, how would you feel from that perspective of somebody basically coming up to you and saying, actually, I think you should share the money that you earn because, you know, it's inspired from that?
Okay, let's put it this way. When we talk about copyright infringements, is no one can hold the chord progression. Like, I can't sue you for using a certain progression. I can't sue you for that. But I can sue you for basically playing the exact same melody the exact same way and putting it out there. You understand what I mean? Is that it has to be very close. So I always say, if I rip somebody and I get sued for it, it's their intellectual property. But that's why I keep saying you have to add your flavor. You have to add your twist. What is it about the progression? Because the truth is, you would stumble upon the progression anyway.
Sure.
It's not like there's only 12 like notes in the whole musical language.
You're going to struggle not to use a progression. And I worry about the precedent that's being set, because some of the court cases that have been brought against musicians have been pretty ropey, and yet they've been successful. And there's a worrying precedent that's being set where basically, if you try hard enough, you've got enough money, you can basically sue anyone for anything. And that's sort of worrying in a creative industry. I feel like that would sort of dilute the enthusiasm for coming up with stuff. So.
Well, bro, the way I look at it is, I'll put out stuff, and if I get sued for it, it's money. That's all it is. What you suing me for? You suing me for money. So the truth is, I'll say openly in court, we can either cut the deal, or if it's not, then we just go all the way, because it can be settled out of court.
Yeah.
A lot of these, this is where I think artists get it twisted. We're in the music business.
Yeah.
That's what we're in. Everything is about deals. You're cutting deals. That's what you're doing.
I suppose the you know, if you're lucky enough to be sued by someone, you probably made a fair amount of good money from your track anyway. But okay, so here's the other way round. Someone, I don't know, Drake, let's say hypothetically, released a song next year and it sounds suspiciously like a Jerome Arab song from 4 years ago, right? Yeah. And you think, hang on a minute, there's a bit too much of my stuff in that song for me to ignore it. How do you feel on the other end of the spectrum as the person who's been the inspiration but hasn't got any of the money back?
Okay, so it has happened to me on a smaller scale.
Oh, okay.
Still quite big, but still on a smaller scale. Party Up, I never got any money for Party Up. It done exceptionally well. We're in the top 10 Beatport charts for 3 weeks running, in the top 100 for, I think, over like 3 months or something along those lines.
Wow.
I never seen anything for it. I don't blame anybody. That was on my part. I never registered things correctly. I never like handled the business side correctly. There's a song that we produced in Zambia as well, in 2015, I think it was. Yeah. And then in 2017, there was an AFCON Cup, the Africa Cup of Nations, basically.
Sure, yeah.
And the theme song was recorded by Diamond Platinum and a Namibian artist. Can't remember the Namibian artist's name. They had ripped the song, like pretty much the same vibe, same chord progression. I'll send you the links and you can tell me.
Yeah. Please do. I'd love to see the comparison. Yeah.
But then again, in 2015, I wasn't registered with PRS. I wasn't registered with any companies. I hadn't registered the songs correctly. So even though I can prove that I created the intellectual property, I hadn't registered it. So according to law, it's just an idea.
Yeah, I suppose that's the problem, isn't it? Is then you sort of stray down that road of when you actually have to start proving dates and, you know, this came before that and all that. I mean, it just becomes a sort of like, you know.
But if it's Drake, I'm going to court because I know the hype that's around it.
I'll be your lawyer. We'll go in together. We'll go in all guns blazing.
Because the truth is, even if I lose that case, the exposure I'm getting from that case, exactly. My career is good. People are listening to my music.
Drake ripped off who? Jerome Arab?
Who's that?
You suddenly, overnight, you have like 15,000 more followers on Instagram. You're great. Cool, man. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about, because it's something that I'm interested in. How does the scene, especially the grassroots, like on the ground scene, live gigs, you know, making connections with fans, that sort of thing, how does the scene differ in Zimbabwe and Zambia and perhaps some of the other African states that you've played in compared to the European scene?
Culturally, in Europe, people go to festivals and go to shows just because that's what they do.
Yeah.
You understand what I mean?
What they spend their money on, right? You know, it's like, I'm just a festival person, tick, tick. Yeah.
Sure. Like there's a gig happening at such and such a pub. Oh, who's playing? They don't really care. They ask the question just so that they kind of have an idea of, oh, so it's this sound. But they're still going to go and check it out. That's the culture in Europe. Yeah. Whereas in Africa, it's very much so who is playing. Right.
So that suggests to me that it's a struggle as a new artist then. I mean, okay, it's a struggle for everyone, but more of a struggle as a new artist to break into the live scene, perhaps. Would you say that's sort of Southern Africa wide, or is that tailored to specific places?
That's the continent on a very large scale.
Yeah.
So what happens is when you're on the come up, the formula in Africa is have a hit song, have a banger that's being played everywhere. Push the music video, push the banger, make sure people know who you are. And then you approach festivals because you have the most happening song. You're more likely to get bookings, and you could sing your song, that one song, 6-7 times, and the crowd is drunk and they're all right with that. Don't sing stuff they don't know.
Yeah. Would you say that there's a little bit more, I mean, it sounds like a bit of a negative word, but slightly more fickle in people's tastes? So then people are a bit less welcoming to artists and tracks that they haven't heard before, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, there's a number of factors. Language is also one of them. In Africa, they use the word blow. You know, if you've blown as an artist, if you've made it, then you're good, because then everyone knows your songs, and then they'll come and see you. The promoters will not book you if you do not have any pull. Like if you have 2,000 followers on your socials, like Jerome Arab, and you're doing okay, you're releasing music, you've got a great catalog, you can perform live for 3-4 hours straight with your band. They won't pay Jerome to come and do that. They'll rather pay a covers band which are going to sing songs that the crowd knows. Sure. Than pay Jerome, who has all of this original material. And that I found is quite clear in Africa. In the UK, there's a scene for you when you're starting up. There's a scene for when you're established. There's like there's so many different ways for you to break into the industry or be part of the industry. In Africa, it's quite limited. It's either you're a covers band or you've made it. There's nothing in between.
Yeah. So it sounds difficult then. We said more difficult. Well, I suppose that's what you're saying, right? Is that it's more difficult to. But then I suppose, would you say that there's less competition in Zimbabwe and Zambia?
Way more competition.
More competition.
Yeah.
So more competition, less opportunity, just harder in general.
People look at Africa and they assume Africa's in the dark ages, you know, like,
for sure.
We only hear this music. A lot of the music that people hear are artists that are recording in the Western world. That's what you're hearing. The artists on the continent, there's still like a few that are doing some amazing things from the continent. But the ones in like actually on the continent making things work, there's so many. Like every three or four houses, you've got somebody who's got studio equipment.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's what it's like.
Yeah.
And everyone wants to be an artist.
It's interesting. It's a fascinating thing because I've had the privilege to have traveled a little bit, and there's a few places I've been to. One place that stood out for me was Maputo in Mozambique. It's an amazing art city, and I lived in Angola over 10 years ago, 12 years ago or so, and so I visited Mozambique and Maputo in 2008, 2009. So it was a while ago, but even then it was a huge, vibrant arts community, and I was a little bit surprised and like in a good way for that. Yeah. It's interesting because I feel like in certain hubs there's an amazing creative pulse, but I suppose like countrywide, let's say in Mozambique, there simply isn't the infrastructure outside of the capital to have a nice venue that's dedicated to artists. It's sort of like it's a lofty thing. It's like it's something that comes after a lot of development, and I suppose that's the advantage in Europe, is that development has been going on a lot longer, which means there's more opportunity for playing in venues and pubs and sort of artistic money for arts, I guess, in smaller areas as well as the big cities. And I feel like outside the big cities there's basically nothing for you to latch onto, but there's probably a lot of people who still want to be involved in the arts.
So that's exactly it. So you have all the big cities that have the festivals and stuff, and then you've got basically artists that want to play at those festivals from everywhere. Yeah. So it's like you have in Zimbabwe, you've got some of the nice festivals. When we were growing up, were like Haifa, which is Harare International Festival. It's quite big. I mean, now there's like Jacaranda. There's like 5 festivals a year that everyone wants to play. And then you've got like a good, 50,000 artists?
Yeah, competition is absolutely crazy. And there's one little thing, I've got a question for you actually, just before. I'm going to ask you to play another little song if that's okay, but I have one question before you do that. Is you mentioned language, and my experience of Southern Africa in particular is that in Angola, let's say, as an example, and Mozambique's another example, you have the overarching language, which is the sort of colonial language, Portuguese, but within the country, you have maybe 5 or 6 common tongues, and they're quite regionalized. And that tends to be the way for a lot of Southern African countries. And you mentioned language a little bit when you talk about music and how it affects, but there's definitely more languages that are more widely spoken in Southern Africa than Europe. And I'd be interested to know what you think about the use of language in music from the artist's perspective in Southern Africa.
Yeah, I mean, the artists that are big on the continent all sing in some sort of a local kind of language. Okay. If you think about it, if I were to give you, like, with the Nigerians, they do pidgin more. So it's still English, but it's more of a local sounding English. Sure. And that just means that majority of Nigeria can relate to their music. That's like a good 100 and something million people, 200 million people that can understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
That's like the overall language. When you think about it from Zimbabwe, there's about 15 million in population, and maybe 5 million of them will be Shona speakers, and then another like 5 million will be in Ndebele, and then the rest, there's like other languages will make up the rest. So if you're singing in Shona or Ndebele, like you still got a bit of like, you still got like maybe 10 million people you could reach with those languages. But you see what I'm saying about the language is, it's so easy like to think, I grew up speaking English. I grew up in an urban area in Zimbabwe. I didn't learn how to speak Shona until I was like 21.
Yeah.
And I wish I did, because there's so much, like the people that are doing well have songs in Shona, rap in Shona and English, you know. Even in Zambia, the biggest rapper in Zambia used to rap in English, and then he changed to one of the mother tongues, which is Bemba. And Chef 187 is like a household name there, all of a sudden, you know. And it's language. It is, whether people want to hide from it or not. Like I've done songs where I've opened up with a Portuguese statement, you know, because my mom's Portuguese, and I found that I got traction from it, like little traction. But people were like, oh, you know, in Southern Africa, like, oh, the Mozambicans were like, oh, okay, we can relate to that. When I wrote My World, all the Shona speakers and people part of the Shona culture were like, okay, he sings in English, and then when he sings in Shona, oh my gosh. And it was, that's, in fact, I'll go into it.
If you could sing a little bit in some Shona, that'd be amazing, but it's up to you, man. I'll leave it to you.
So I'm singing the second verse, because that's the Shona verse.
Okay, amazing, cool.
Kwandiri ndiwe uneyese tete shoko gari ende. So are you feeling me? Cause I'm feeling you. If you believe in me, here's what I will do. Neni unogara uchiseka unguri hepi chete. Neni unogara uchifara. Baby, are we compatible? I need to know, my incredible. Cause when I see you, hana yangu inorova. When I'm with you, moyo wangu inotanga kutabirirwa. Inindi no kuda. You mean the world to me. So that's that.
Man, I love that. And honestly, the interplay between the two languages is so natural for you as well. Like, I think that's really cool. I'm not such a linguist, but it sort of reminded me a little bit of Swahili. I don't know if that's fair to say.
No. It's quite Shona. They Bantu languages, so they're quite connected. There's a lot of similar sounding words and words that kind of mean the same thing, you know. So yeah, I've also put like Swahili in some songs, and the reason why I've done that is because I've never grown up speaking a local language. So when I was writing this song, I was like, okay, I had to take the simple Shona I know and put it into the song. Yeah. And then the parts that I can't sing in Shona, I was like, okay, I'll add the English because I don't know how to say it as smoothly in that language.
Sure.
You know. But it's been a learning process, and it's been good because it's helped me understand that it's about communicating with people. That's what the music is about.
Yeah,
it's everything to do with the person that you're kind of, when you're writing the song, you know, a lot of artists get caught up in telling their story, and it's all about them and their story. But it's actually about the lessons in your story that people can learn from, and people that you're sharing with people that they can take away with, that can help them understand either what they're going through or help them enjoy a particular moment in their life. That's all you're doing, is you're helping them through certain experiences. That's basically it. You know, that's the songwriting process.
It's so true as well, right? And I always feel that for me as well is that it's music becomes a soundtrack for my life. Not necessarily from my perspective as a musician, but the music I listen to becomes becomes the I don't know, the concrete kind of mixing, like between the bricks, you know, somehow, and it sort of just solidifies everything together. So, and it's true, like I may attach myself to something in a song which perhaps wasn't the original meaning of the original artist, but that's what it meant to me. So yeah, it's a really cool thing. And I really like I really like that idea of having that multifaceted element to your music. So obviously you have the history in Zimbabwe, you have your experiences of growing up there, and that's and the different languages Shona, and the different languages that you were speaking when you got older, and I think to incorporate that and sort of like for it to be part of your story and part of your music moving forward is a really powerful thing. I think one of the problems actually that isn't spoken much about in England and the UK is that we're kind of like stuck, because music has become the international, or English has become the international language of music, which means in a way, the identity in my music has to be from something else rather than the language. And part of me is a little bit jealous that I don't have, like if I was Welsh, maybe I'd sing in Welsh a little bit as well, like, and have a bit more identity with the music. But simply being English is kind of like, it's kind of like whitewashed if you excuse the phrase, but sort of whitewashed the sort of linguistic element of my creativity. But yeah, anyway, it's interesting.
No, I get where you're coming from. When you think about it, it is tough in that sense. It's like, okay, so, but then that's when you ask yourself, what is it that you're capturing? You know, like, what is it that you're trying to say? And you'll find, like, that's why I think Ed Sheeran is one of the greatest songwriters of all time, is he just knew how to speak to everybody. Drake, same thing. Yeah. Drake is definitely one of those, even if he's got ghostwriters, his songs just speak to so many people of all different walks of life. And that is something else to do, to be able to write for that many people without even thinking about it. Like, I mean, maybe these guys do think about it. I don't know. I've never really had the conversation.
Yeah.
I'll call Ed next week and
yeah, exactly. Get his secrets.
Yeah, but
I love that somebody. I imagine one of your followers, Prince of Zambia, has just joined. That's an amazing name.
yeah, Prince. Yeah. So I mean, a lot of the time, I found with artists is we're always seeking some sort of like approval to do what we do. We want people to like us, and that's because of social media. You know, the modern day way of consumption is people ask me, okay, Jay, so when you drop in the next album? And from the beginning of 2020, I wanted to release a song a week, because it doesn't make sense releasing albums. The way people consume music, no one's really listening. Unless you got a strong following, they're not listening to your album. So I was like, okay, so I want to do a song every week, and it gives people a chance to digest it and move on, you know, to the next one.
Yeah.
That's kind of like my take on where we're at right now. And even in your writing, then you kind of challenge yourself to constantly be working towards the next track. And you're not looking at, oh, well, this track must get 1 million streams, and this track needs to make me, you know, people must hear this. It's like, no, yeah, people must hear this, but I'm not going to stop creating just so that I can make sure you hear this. Let the song do what it needs to do. You know, if it gets heard in 20 years, that's up to the world. If it gets heard in 50 years, that's up to the world. What you have to do, and your job, I feel, as a creator or as a songwriter, is to just keep putting it out until you can't put it out no more. Yeah,
man. So that leads me on to a really nice point, actually. Of we talked about the past, we've talked about the present. Like, what would you say the future holds for you? So short term, maybe coming out of this whole thing with COVID and all the problems we've had with COVID, and then moving forward, like what does the next sort of phase musically for you entail?
I've been trying to figure out how to fund my career for the longest time. You know, I've struggled to see how to do it when you haven't got shows coming in, because streams, even if you play the playlist game, you're not going to make that much money unless you're doing millions, and it's going to cost you a few thousands to get there. So I heard about Patreon. So any artists that are out there that got a decent following, even if you got 10 people, get on Patreon and get those people to become members and offer them a package, you know, offer them access to what you're doing. I just want to create and create until I can't create no more. So come next year, I want to release 50 something songs. That's my goal. So every week, I want them to have a new song. And if my Patreon account can get to $500, that's possible. If it can get to $1,000, I will drop a music video and I'll push it on as many platforms as possible. So it will go on continental TV in Africa. I'll push it for TV here. You know, like I will push with the resources I have and with the network I have. You know, if as the money climbs, I will carry on to create. Like I'll just carry on creating. So it will go from music to short films, hopefully to feature films, to docu-films, back in the acting and directing world. My job is to create. That's what Jerome was born to do, and that's what I plan on doing.
Amazing. I think it's a very good plan. You know, you're diversifying into the modern era of creativity, and Patreon's a really great tool, and you're inspiring me, Jerome. That's the thing. Hey, we pretty much run out of time, but I wanted to say thank you so much for spending this hour with us. You got some love. Nick Brick said the great Arab's a very clever man, a very interesting hour.
Thank you.
And I would certainly agree. So how for those guys watching at home, if they want to know more about you, what sort of spaces do you have online? Obviously you've got your Instagram account, but where's the best place to go to find out more about Jerome Arab?
Right now I'm gearing everything towards Patreon. I'm not gonna lie. So come January, Patreon will have like access to my life on a very different wavelength. It'll be pretty much, you'll see the creation process. You'll hear the songs before everyone else. You'll see the music videos before everyone else. And depending on what tier you're on, you'll also help decide where we should go as a tribe. Because I don't believe that I exist alone, you know, like I believe that people have contributed to my success, and therefore I feel like I should actually engage with people. And that's what I want to do, is I want to give to the true fans. But you can get me on Instagram. You can get me on Facebook. Instagram's The Great Arab. On Twitter, it's The African Arab. You can get me also on The African Arab on Facebook. I'm on Triller as Jerome Arab. I'm on TikTok as Jerome Arab as well.
I'll have to add you on TikTok. I joined quite recently.
Yeah.
I'll go find your TikTok.
My TikTok sucks. I didn't realize how old I was. I did not realize how old I was until I go on TikTok. Yeah. Watched a few of them and I was like, okay, I need to either engage my son who's 3 or really study this. Like, yeah, so my TikTok's not all that, but my Patreon, as I said, is going to be putting out a lot of the content that we're talking about. There'll be a lot of music, a lot of these type of talks as well. I'm going to be putting out a thing called Let's Talk, which is me speaking to artists. I'll probably hopefully get you on as well.
Oh man, I'd love to come on. That'd be great. Yeah, that'd be really cool.
And
we'll
talk more about things that actually can help people progress. That's the whole point of what Jerome Arab has become about. It's how do I then help Jeremy reach his goals? You know, with the knowledge I have and with and the network I have. You know, if Jeremy says he wants to perform at Coachella, how do we make it happen? That's how I'm feeling. If he says he wants to be on the Glasgow main stage, how do we make that happen? And that's where I feel are my strengths, is in creating the journey that people would most likely reap those type of results or rewards. Yeah.
Amazing. Hey man, thank you so much for this this time with me today. And I have to say, you're just down the road from me at the minute, so hopefully before I head off and before you head off on our next adventures, we'll be able to grab a drink and cheers to the end of, hopefully the end of the lockdowns in the UK. I'm going to keep my fingers crossed. Thanks so much. Thanks everyone who's watching at home, everyone who's catching up either on the podcast or later on. Thank you very much for tuning in. Thank you very much, Jerome Arab, again. And see you next time. I've got a stream on Thursday, which is my 6 p.m. stream of like upbeat covers, so people can come on to that. But yeah, thank you very much, Jerome, J-Man, and I'll speak to you very soon, I have no doubt.
Thank you. Peace.
Cheers, brother. See you soon. Ciao.
Bye. Ciao.
This is Jazzology. It's surreal science, honestly. Not just a podcast of me talking about me. Or maybe it is. It's Jazzology.
What actually happens every so often is that books like St. John and Brunswick, thinking it will land in Newfoundland, but